Okay, good morning. I'm here at a block of flats in Bishop Stortford actually this morning, where we've got a tenant reporting a damp and mould problem and complaining that they just can't seem to get rid of it. And obviously that's quite worrying for our landlord, the client, and we want to make sure the tenant is on top of managing this problem as well. I highly suspect that it's a condensation issue and not an actual damp issue, because as you can see, the block of flats is a fairly modern block of apartments here in Bishop Stortford, and we've managed this flat for a number of years and never had a issue with it before. Quite often tenants will move in to apartments and not know about ventilating them and how to do that sufficiently. So we're going to go in, have a look, see how the tenant is living, see what sort of telltale signs we can see, and find out if there's a real problem or whether they just need advice on that. So let's go, and I'll update you after. Right, so as expected, I have been inside the flat now, and to be honest, as soon as I walked in, I could tell this was a ventilation issue. Just hit with the humidity inside the flat. Have a little walk around. The amount of stuff the tenant's got in the property as well, it's quite overwhelming. They say it's because they're packing because they want to leave the flat, but some simple advice I've just given them will totally solve the problem. And as I say, we've managed this flat for a number of years, never ever had a problem with it. But essentially, they've got too much stuff inside a small 2-bedroom flat. They're not ventilating it enough, and they've got the heating on full whack. So they're doing some of the right things by heating the flat, but they're not actually ventilating it properly. And just a conversation with the tenant turns out that actually whenever they go out, they close all the windows because they're on the ground floor, and obviously for security purposes they're worried about that. So I've now shown them how to use the window on what I call security lock, put it on the latch so there's still a little bit of airflow coming into the flat. We've also discussed regarding leaving the internal doors open and creating an airflow throughout the whole flat, and I've also discussed the amount of belongings they have in the property, and the fact that, you know, that will actually stifle the airflow as well because it can't get around all this stuff up against the walls. So we've discussed moving some things away from the walls. The other thing with condensation mould is obviously it is a live growth, so once it starts growing, then you have to kill it off before it'll actually totally go away. It can't just be wiped off, it needs to be killed and treated, and then it will go away after that with sufficient ventilation. So it really is a funny enough, I mean, the tenant said to me, oh well, nobody told me this when I moved into the flat. We do actually give tenants information on controlling damp, etc., but it's one of those things you don't think you have to teach people, especially these tenants. Is actually a mother and son family, and the mother is probably in her 50s at least, so it's kind of one of the things you don't expect to have to tell people, but quite often you do. So she's really pleased with that advice. We're going to look at the extractor fans as well, because it appears the isolator switch may not be working sufficiently, and actually the extractor fans aren't operating properly in the bathrooms. But as I've explained to her, that is not going to solve all of her problems. It's definitely a condensation issue and not enough ventilation, and by following a few instructions we've now given her, hopefully that will solve the problem.